Welcome to Wallace on Wire. Today we're talking about Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's success in brokering a major peace accord. And we really need to jump straight into this monumental news coming out of Kuala Lumpur today. Thailand and Cambodia are actually signing a peace accord right here.
Right here in Malaysia. It's quite something.
It is, and this isn't just some ceremonial signing. This feels like the direct result of very fast, very high-stakes diplomacy that Malaysia kicked off. I mean, the time frame seems almost unprecedented for our region.
That speed, you're right, that's the critical thing here. This signing, it's happening, as you know, on the sidelines of the 47th Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit, related meetings. And if you look beyond the usual handshakes and photos, this accord really signals a massive diplomatic win for regional stability.
Yeah.
And it's crucial timing, isn't it? It sets a very proactive tone as Malaysia gets ready to take over the 2025 chairmanship of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
And the philosophy behind it all, the way Anwar framed it, that's really powerful too. He's insisting this isn't about either side making a concession. He called it a profound demonstration of courage.
Exactly. That framing courage over concession, that seems to be the absolute bedrock of this peace deal.
Yeah.
Because, when a nation chooses dialogue instead of, escalating militarily, especially when there's so much national pride and history tied up in it, that takes genuine political bravery. So that conviction really shapes the whole thing. The idea that dialogue has to prevail, even when, maybe especially when, the situation on the ground looks purely military.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. We need to understand why this matters so much. Because this wasn't some old, dusty disagreement over maps, was it? This was live, an active military flashpoint just recently.
Absolutely right. It risked spiraling quite badly. To really get the tension, you need to look at the geography. The root issue is this long-running dispute over, an 817-kilometer border between Thailand and Cambodia.
That's a huge border area.
It's extensive. And it's not just about lines on a map, It gets complicated by overlapping claims to ancient historical sites, temples, and also, significantly, potential resource access, particularly in contested zones that might hold untapped resources.
And here's where that timeline becomes so important. Because, like you said, this wasn't just simmering in the background just weeks ago, right? On July 24th, there was an actual military clash.
Yeah.
Documented.
Yeah.
Right on that border.
Serious incident.
So the intensity of that clash, it meant the risk of it blowing up, of both sides moving in heavy gear, maybe pulling in allies. That risk was suddenly very, very real.
Extremely high. When you have an active military conflict erupting along an 817-kilometer border, the whole region starts to get nervous. Everyone prepares for the worst.
You have to.
Any kind of military upgrade, more troops, more hardware in that disputed area, it forces other nations nearby to rethink their own security. It really did have the potential to destabilize things across the board. And protecting those thousands of civilians living near the border, that became an immediate priority for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
Right. And this is where Malaysia didn't just, offer to help. They cut straight through all the usual noise. This is immediate, proactive diplomacy to find. The speed is just astounding. What actually happened in those 4 days right after the July 24th conflict?
Well, this is where we see that strategy, that courage idea Anwar talked about, really put into action. He seems to have bypassed a lot of the usual diplomatic channels, the red tape that often governs how the Association of Southeast Asian Nations handles conflict resolution.
Which normally involves?
Normally, an issue like this, it would need formal talks, trying to build consensus among all 10 member states, and then probably a slow, mediated engagement process. That can take weeks, maybe longer, and often tensions just get worse while that happens.
So by skipping that, what was the risk Anwar took? There must have been pushback, surely.
Oh, definitely a risk. Twofold, really. First, the political gamble. If he called an immediate meeting and, say, the leaders refused to come, or if it all fell apart with no agreement, Malaysia would look like it overreached and failed very publicly.
Embarrassing.
And second, it could potentially alienate some members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations who really value that traditional, slower, consensus-first model. He essentially acted almost unilaterally for the sake of stability, probably knowing there could be some institutional friction later.
But that very speed, that gamble, seems to be what worked.
Precisely. So on July 28th, just 4 days later, remember, Prime Minister Anwar hosts this special immediate meeting right at his official residence in Putrajaya. It wasn't a formal summit, more like a high-stakes private meeting designed purely for fast results.
And the level of engagement was key, wasn't it? It wasn't ambassadors or envoys sorting this out.
No. Top level. The acting Prime Minister of Thailand, Putum, and the Prime Minister of Cambodia, Han Mene, were both there. The actual leaders, the decision makers, facing each other directly, and crucially, on neutral ground provided by Malaysia.
Which must have helped.
Immensely, I'd imagine. And because it was high level and so immediate, the outcome was just as swift. They agreed right then and there to an immediate ceasefire.
Wow.
And that single action, that agreement on July 28th, it successfully just diffused the whole border situation before either side could really commit to a big, irreversible military buildup. That ceasefire was the crucial first step that paved the way for this full peace accord they're signing today.
Okay, let's broaden this out then. What are the implications here? Because this quick fix, it's being seen as more than just, good mediation. It feels like a statement about regional leadership, about the Association of Southeast Asian Nations itself.
I think it is a critical moment, yes. This rapid, successful intervention. It could well become the new benchmark, maybe, a gold standard for how a motivated member state can step up for regional stability.
It stopped the fighting, protected people.
Exactly. Prevented a potential military escalation, kept citizens safe, and, importantly, it showed that the structure of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, when it's used decisively, even if it's slightly outside the usual slow channels, can still be really effective for preventing conflict.
So does this model, this faster, more direct approach, does it challenge that traditional consensus-based way the Association of Southeast Asian Nations usually works?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Especially as Malaysia looks towards chairing in 2025. Look, the consensus model is important. It ensures every member feels their voice is heard, which builds unity.
But it can be slow, painfully slow in a crisis.
You can paralyze action, yes. Anwar's approach here suggests that maybe in times of really acute instability, bilateral or perhaps trilateral high-level talks, hosted quickly by a neutral party, might be a more effective first step. It gives you speed. The trade-off, though, is that it might cause friction with members who prefer sticking rigidly to the established processes.
It definitely backs up Anwar's core message, though. The one from his opening address at the 47th Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit. This peace deal is like Exhibit A, proving that in uncertain times, understanding and dialogue have to win out. Making that choice, stepping back from the edge, it fundamentally changes the path forward for those countries.
It really does. And for you listening to this, just think about the geopolitical significance for a moment. An escalating military conflict between two neighbors, something that could have easily tanked markets, caused a humanitarian crisis, was stopped, secured, and now formalized with an accord. Right here, essentially in our backyard. And all in less than a month.
Yeah, when you put it like that, the speed is remarkable. It does make you wonder, doesn't it? What possibilities does this open up? If this kind of immediate, direct diplomacy can work here, could it set a new standard? How many other conflicts around the world might be diffused if regional players were willing to take that kind of high-stakes initiative right away, instead of, waiting for international bodies or letting things just simmer for months or years?
It brings us right back to where we started, with that idea of courage versus concession in diplomacy. Malaysia stepping up to host, to mediate, pushing for that immediate ceasefire, and then seeing it through to this final accord. It absolutely solidifies its commitment to regional stability, to conflict prevention.
Sets a strong precedent.
It's exactly the kind of decisive leadership and platform they'd want heading into the 2025 chairmanship of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
Absolutely. This peace accord feels like powerful proof. That ability for leaders to choose dialogue, to step back from military action, it isn't weakness. It's actually the highest form of political courage and the most beneficial for everyone in the region.
The lesson seems pretty clear, doesn't it? Choosing dialogue isn't just about avoiding a fight. It's actively building a more stable future.
Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.